Welcome to Plot Twist Radio, the show where creativity, storytelling, and the unpredictable path of the creative life all collide. I'm your host, Erin. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hello, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, Erin. Thank you so much for having me. And I love what you're doing, and I really appreciate my opportunity to be part of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. Before we get going, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure, audience. My name is Ray Hartjen. I am a writer and a musician who lives in Southern California. If you're familiar with the area, it's Mission Viejo, Orange County, south of Los Angeles. And interested in plot twists, not only from a creative perspective, but also from a very personal perspective, a twist in my own plot that got me to doing something different. So I'm looking forward to kind of sharing our conversation today, and hopefully, one thing I haven't included, I guess I'll foreshadow my plot twist. I am a cancer patient. I have a blood cancer called multiple myeloma, and one of the things that I really want to reach out to the audience today, Erin, is that a big part of my life the last 7 years is to be a cancer patient advocate, right? Because when I became a cancer patient, so many people helped me out, and they became my role models. And I was like, I want to be like those people. If I'm feeling good, if I'm feeling strong, there's something I can do to help pull somebody else up who needs a little help. I want to be that person. So audience members out there, if you are struggling with any type of thing, a serious health issue, be it multiple myeloma or not, multiple myeloma is relatively rare, but if there's anything that I can help you with, I sincerely want you to reach out to me, because it's been the honor of my life to be associated with patients and their caregivers from around the world. So that's like the one CTA I want to deliver at the end of this, and maybe that's a big part of my introduction. I hope it's a big part of my introduction, because it is now, right? So yeah.
And it's so important. I used to work in healthcare, and you are completely correct. The advocates, they always amazed me. We had the healthcare team, of course, but the volunteers that came in to brighten these people's days,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
you can't put a price on how valuable that is.
Yeah, and patients and caregivers, particularly very early in a journey or fight against a disease or a condition, many times there's just a feeling of isolation. They're alone, and the message that they really need to hear is that, man, we all get something. You are not alone. There's somebody out there with you. Somebody who's been there a little bit before you, and there's also will be people behind you as well. But there is a strength in numbers, and I tell people all the time, you are so much stronger than you know. You've never really been tested before, but you can handle this. You're stronger than you know. But together, united, we're even stronger still. So, reach out, engage in the community, and know that the community is there to help you.
Excellent message. Excellent message. And I will make sure that your contact information is in the show notes in case anyone wants to reach out.
Yeah, anybody who wants to reach me it's my name on all social platforms. It's my name, Ray Hartjen, at rayhartjen.com. And my email address is rayhartjen@gmail.com. You can hit me anywhere. I'll find my name, and I'll be happy to. I love hearing your stories. Like I said, it's been the honor of my life, with, the exception of, being married to my wife for 30 some odd years and raising two great children, just engaging with people around the world. And, part of it is a memoir I wrote called Me, Myself, and My Multiple Myeloma. I wanted to be a resource to the community, to caregivers, allies, and certainly to patients. And through that book, Erin, I've had the opportunity not only to speak with people like you, but to speak with patients from Australia, New Zealand, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, the Western UK, and all over the United States. So it's just been really cool hearing their stories, and creating a safe place from the one-to-one dialogue with patients who sometimes don't even feel comfortable talking to their own families about it.
Absolutely. Yes. That's
Mm.
that's so wonderful. You're an awesome guy. I can already
Well,
tell.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm sorry for hijacking the front of your front of your episode here, but yeah, it's something I feel passionate about, and it's part of me, and it's a big part of my life, and a real, excuse me, a real plot twist and a real pivot in my life upon my diagnosis in March of 2019.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you were able to get that out there because, like you said, it's an important part of your plot twist. It is your plot twist. So,
Yeah.
yeah, very important. As far as the storytelling component, goes, has that always been with you, or did that kind of start as you were going through this process?
I kind of discovered storytelling, as I progressed through my career, my professional career. I started out in finance, investment banking, and that was, telling stories about different companies to prospective investors, right? And then I went to grad school because I wanted to retool myself. And when I went to grad school, everybody kind of, came out at that time in the early 90s when we became consultants, right? And so I was a consultant and I was very interested in organizational development and the power of the people, the team, things like that. And so I got into those types of work and, doing organizational assessments. It was really, interviewing people and collecting data from within the organization and reporting it back out. So people were telling me stories and I was a turn, creating stories and telling them. And, from that, I moved into marketing and public relations roles. And I realized that, really everything that I'm doing is just telling stories, right? And it didn't really dawn on me when for a while, like a decade or two in my professional career, it's like I'm a storyteller is what I do, and I found an interesting parallel is that I'm also a musician, and music is really telling stories, whether it's through the music itself or whether it's through the lyrics that accompany the music. They're little 3 minute and 27-second stories, right? I instantly, thought of myself, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, Aaron, is like, hey, I'm a storyteller. And that's the way I want to kind of like brand myself. Those are the things that I'm interested in as a consumer of stories. I prefer the story. Like, tell me a story, entertain me, educate me, inform me, or what have you. But, I think it's something that as humans, we strive for. I mean, as little kids, we're like, tell me a story, just don't, lay out the facts, kind of, you create pictures in my mind and so forth. So, once I, kind of came to the realization and was able to articulate it in my head that, hey, you're a storyteller. It takes different approach. You have different applications of it. Embrace that and see, how can you add value professionally to customers, to my own life, to employers by engaging in stories. So yeah, it took me a while to realize I was a storyteller, but all along, I've been telling stories my whole life.
Yeah, and you know what? You laid it out pretty nicely because I never really thought of it like marketing and whatnot. My dad's a marketer. I never really thought about it as telling a story, but you're right. It is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, at the end of the day, all marketing is storytelling. When I was in public relations, I was storytelling to media so they could tell stories about my products. It's yeah, I remember buying a TV once years and years ago. Remember the old store Good Guys? You might be too young to remember the Good Guys, but I'm at I think it was called Good Guys. But the guy was like, "Yeah, I'm just like I'm not." I'm like a scientist or anything. I'm just a guy who sells TVs. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just a guy who sells TVs, man. Everybody is telling stories about something. You're telling stories about a product and you're helping people decide which product they build. If you go over to the university down the street who's doing clinical research or whatever, they're trying for funding. They're telling stories about I need funds for this because this is what we're doing. We're all kind of storytellers, right? You're not just a TV salesman person. You're helping people out, but you're a storyteller, and so are the people writing grants for research at the university, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a lot of storytelling, but certainly marketing is all about storytelling. That what we try to do as marketers is engage with customers. And how do you engage with customers the best? Well, customers are people, and people like to engage with stories. Two ways. Two-way dialogue, which is great. Now, it used to be we told stories in marketing by telling you something. Now, a lot of times we can ask you things, and then you tell us. Then we find out more about you, and then we can ask you more questions, and you tell me more about you, and then we can tell stories that really apply just to you, and hopefully you buy our product, service, or experience or whatever.
I like that personalized approach too.
Mhm.
But I think that probably resonates better, but I'm no marketing person.
I mean, you're telling stories from a perspective, but still, it's you're still marketing to like, hey, this is what I do, and this is why I think you'll find it important. This is why I think you'll be entertained, educated, informed, and so on, you're a marketer. And the funny thing is, Aaron, as a freelance marketer, one of the frustrations I have with folks is that everybody is a marketer because everybody consumes so much marketing, right? They don't really understand maybe marketing as a science, to all the data behind the creative that goes around it, but they're exposed to all this creative, so they have an opinion about it. Just like everybody's a critic when they watch a movie, because they've watched so many movies. It's like, do you know how difficult it is to make a movie? Have you ever watched the credits roll and you see the 472 people that were associated with the movie? It's a complicated process, right? But we can sit on our couch and go, I could have been better than that. Yeah, everybody is a marketer in my opinion because we consume so many marketing messages all day, nonstop. But marketing is such a interesting field to be in just because the science associated with the art, right? It's not just the creative; it's all the data that goes behind it and the technologies and so forth. So it's really kind of a fascinating field.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Mm.
So, as far as your storytelling goes, how does storytelling for, let's say, your music versus something like your book Outflanked? How do you approach those situations?
Yeah, they're similar and they're different, right? The big limitation with a song or music is that you have to do it really kind of pretty quickly. You don't have a lot of there are some very famous songs out there that are 10, 12, 15 minutes long, but typically they're pretty small and you got to get to it pretty quickly. Consumer of music, don't bore us, get to the chorus, type of thing. So it's like bam, where's the hook? Where's the earworm that you go? That's if you want to be like commercially successful in the songwriting thing. But you still have those limitations. At the same time, it's just like capturing attention, entertaining, educating, informing. But even if it's informing, you need to do it kind of like in a entertaining way. You can be super dry and people just maybe not want to read that in your story, right? And then I think part of the storytelling aspect of it, whether it's music, writing, whatever, understanding the different media that your target audience might want to digest. Some people like to read short form. Some people like to read long form. Some people want to watch. Some people want to listen. So on and so on and so on. So breaking your stories down into multiple platforms so people can entertain it. That's one of the things I struggle with as a writer. I have 6 books out, but none of them are audiobooks. My wife, for example, I think she's only read one of my 6 books because she listens to audiobooks. And I had people, saying, we need audiobooks. You need audiobooks. And I'm like, "No, I'm not sure how to do that. I need to talk to my publisher, and then it seems awfully complicated when my publisher comes back to me with, what needs to happen and so on. But yeah, interesting question. Lots of similarities between songs and longer form writing. Also, lots of differences. And the big difference would be, the media and then trying to see what you can do from a writing aspect to give people what they want, so they'll consume your work.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
it does. It does. Very nice.
Hmm.
So, as far as your books go, what is the most recent book that you had released?
The most recent 2 books of mine, they're 2 novels, Outflanked and the Iranian Fiasco. I'd like to thank the current administration for keeping the Iranian fiasco like in the news for me. I started writing this book last summer, and it just with the title that had a little profanity in it, and that was one of my big concerns. It's like if I have some like the Iranian cluster, and I like would bookstores stock that or not? So I ended up changing the working title just in time for a book that is entitled. I saw this, maybe a month ago. It's called Cluster, and it's out there in bookstores. I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't need to change my title anyway. But those 2 recent books are espionage thrillers. Aaron, they are my first novels, my first fiction works. My first 4 books were nonfiction, and I wanted to challenge myself. Right, I knew I could write a really cool nonfiction book. I have 2 of them in particular. Well, my memoir I'm proud of for separate reasons, but 2 other books, Immaculate: How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh, and the Indy 500: A Year-Long Quest to Win the Greatest Spectacle in Racing. Super proud of those books. Those are really good. I think they're really good books, right? And but I don't. I hate to kind of say this as a writer of these nonfiction books. I don't typically read nonfiction. I typically read fiction. About a book every week or 2 weeks, and I kind of like those thriller books and mysteries and things like that. And I'm like, oh. I took it as kind of like a dare to myself. "I dare you, Ray. I don't think you could write a book, that is, compelling and entertaining." And it's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll take that bet." And so I went out and wrote Outflanked, as kind of like a proof of concept to myself. Could I do it? And I got a lot of positive feedback right away. People are like, "Man, this is really, really good," and you kinda leave me hanging a little bit. I kinda wanna know more about these characters. I'm like, "You wanna know more about the characters? That's great. I'll start a second book." So that's the second book. I continue to get, positive feedback about it. I'm currently working on a third book and still tossing around, a couple of ideas, some outlines for some additional nonfiction books to kinda get me back, where I was when I started this writing journey.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying about the nonfiction because I started in nonfiction. It has its place and stuff, but I'm like you, I don't really read it. I
Mhm.
like the fantasy, I like to escape. So, I like the action, and a lot of nonfiction obviously doesn't have much action, so but,
Yeah, when I was a kid, I read a lot of nonfiction, biographies and autobiographies, because that's kind of what we did for like school book reports and things like that, and then once school kind of like got a little older in school and high school, then we started reading all these fiction books, these classics, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think I kind of really got into more fiction books, darn near 40 years ago with the Tom Clancy types of novels, and they, a lot of espionage and military and things like that. And, the incredibly complex and in-depth books, these super thick books, right? And I wanted to bring some of that flair to it, some of that detail, but at the same time, knowing that readers have changed over the last 40 years. Readers don't tend to pick up big, thick books and read them. My publisher tells me it's like 300-page book is like a no-no. Bookstores don't want a 300-page book, and first time they told me that, I had a copy of War and Peace on my desk, and I picked it up. I'm like, "This is War and Peace. It's 1,000 pages." And they're like, You're right, Ray. It's the one of the best books ever written." And you know what? Nobody buys it today. And I'm like, "Well, I mean, you would know. I don't know." So, one of the challenges of writing, the book that I wanted to write, these novels, Outflanked and the Iranian Fiasco, is, how can I put the detail in there for like, the tech nerd, that, wants to know the detail, at the same time, keeping it, smaller in size, readable, keep the action flowing, and the like. So, I thought that was kind of interesting discovery for me. It's like, this is what I want to make, but this is what, my readers really want to read. So, those types of compromises. And then it just struck me how easy I had it today doing research. Because if you want to have this, immaculate, detail and kind of get into things, whether it's a location or a certain technology of something, or what have you, I've got Google and I can just fire it up. Whereas, if this had been 40 years ago, I would have had to think it all out, write out a big outline, go to the library, spend hours upon hours at the library, then maybe spend a few more knowing that I might have questions later and I don't want to have to come back to the library. I mean, just days, right, at the library. Now I can do days of research over the course of writing, but at the comfort of my own home on my laptop. So good news. A lot easier journey today, right?
so true, so true. There's so many things that I need to look up, and if I had to, like you said, go to the library, I would never get anything written ever.
Yeah, and I like to write organically, kind of like in the flow. I don't use an outline, right? And so
Right.
having I'd be going to the library every day, and, I would have to learn. I guess you've had to learn back in the '80s, or even before 2010, 2005, you'd have to, like, learn to organize yourself in ways like, "This is all the stuff I need. Let's go and get it all done this week at the library." And then hopefully you get all the answers you need for the next, 5, 6 months when you write the book, to be able to not have to go back to the library again.
So, so true. So, where can the readers find you and your books?
You can find the books anywhere books are sold. Yeah, my publisher, Morgan James Publishing, for 3 of my books, they have told me, always say that wherever fine books are sold, and don't say Amazon. But, truth be told, 60% of books are sold on Amazon. So they're available on Amazon, available at, Barnes and Noble and anywhere else books are sold. Also, you can, catch me directly at my website at rayhartjen.com. And like I said, through all social media platforms, my handle is Ray Hartjen. With the exception of TikTok, I'm like Ray Hartjen 5. I don't know what happened there. I think maybe my thumbs got moving too fast on my mobile keyboard. Reach out to me. If you have, any questions about books and things like that, I'd love to talk to you about my books. But also, like I said, sincerely, if you're a person that just needs to chat to somebody about a health issue that you or somebody that you care for is experiencing, I would love to hear your story and see what any way it's possible for me to help.
Very good. And I'll make sure those links are in the show notes. I wish you the absolute best on your journey. And thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been my absolute pleasure, Aaron. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And like I said, I love what you're doing. So I'm just super cool, super glad to be part of it. So thank you so much.